The Red Cross is calling me. I'm just going to let them hang up. I'm on our house phone because it's a good connection.
It's okay, Judy. When he gets ready, we're going to be recording this. So
You're all set to
Okay.
start.
all right, thank you.
Okay, you can start.
Thank you. Hello, and welcome to the Lucy Robbins Wells Library 82nd Annual Meeting. My name is Diane Stam, and I'm President of the Board of Trustees. This is our second year holding our meetings in a virtual platform due to the COVID-19 and its many variants. What seemed so strange to us last year has become, if not the norm, definitely more familiar to all of us. Many of us have run our work, school, and lives from dining room tables, spare bedrooms, or in my case, the basement over this last year. Our library staff and community have found ways to stay safe, mask up, and work in cohorts, allowing us to keep a physical distance while maintaining personal interactions. We routinely monitor the rate of COVID cases, always hoping that they are low enough to provide in-person services. Even when we are allowed to open our doors to the public, it was on a limited basis with many areas at reduced capacity or closed off. Our biggest challenge in this area is the size and configuration of our library building. Our last expansion was in 1988, over 30 years ago, and our world and our community's needs have changed greatly since then. I'm very pleased to note that while our library was closed to walk-in traffic, the staff pulled together to continue to provide remote services, such as the Lucy to Go book pickup, answering calls to the reference desk, and of course, helping folks to get access to online services for books, movies, and learning, as well as providing age-appropriate grab-and-go kits for entertainment and learning. Our library director will go into more detail during her presentation. Throughout this time, our director has stayed informed, modified services to follow the town and health department safety guidelines. Our library's 5K road race, normally held in May, was moved to October this year. That's right, it will be holding our fundraiser on Sunday, October 3rd. We'll be having a 2-day packet pickup. Participants may pick up materials on Saturdays, October 2nd, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. or Sunday, October 3rd, before the race, from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the library parking lot. If you have not done so already, please check out the library's website for both the race registration and our Ready, Set, Go drawings. Our sponsors have continued to come through for us with their continued support for our library and community. They each have our sincere gratitude and appreciation. Now it's time to continue with the business part of our meeting. I'll ask for the secretary's report. I will ask for a motion to waive the reading of the minutes from our last annual meeting on September 14th, 2020. May I have a motion?
Leanne Mankey, I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes.
May I have a second?
Pauline Crack, second.
Thank you, Pauline. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. From here, I will move on to the treasurer's report with Leanne Mankey. Leanne?
I'm Leanne Mankey, the treasurer. My report for 2021, fiscal year end, June 30th, 2021. Even during these very trying and interesting times, I'm pleased to report that Lucy Robbins Wells Library continues to be a huge asset to the Newington community. Along with the rest of the world, COVID-19 has impacted our fundraising efforts as well as our investments, and we are working hard to adapt to these changes. We also continue to invest in our facility with the planned improvements. Our staff took advantage of a bad situation, our closure to the public walk-in traffic, and was able to facilitate the necessary work during that time. When we reopened our doors after this latest shutdown, when we reopen our doors after this latest shutdown, which is today, to public access, I encourage you to come on in and see the physical plant updates that continue to be accomplished. Despite some financial challenges this past year, we're basically financially sound with our investments and continue to look for new ways to grow financially. Since the beginning of January, we have done very well financially. Actually, since COVID started to shut down a bit last year, we've done better. So we typically operate within a break-even budget, and because of our innovative new fundraising efforts, such as the Ready, Set, Go giveaway in lieu of our annual 5K last year, as well as early sponsor receipts for this year's race scheduled for October 3rd, 2020, I'm sorry, October 3rd, 2021, fiscal year end June 30th, 2021. Our income basically kept pace with our general operations expenses. Our restricted and general fund investments also rallied. Individual donations were lower than average this year, but are on the uptick over 2020. The pandemic provided some setbacks to our typical fundraising efforts this year, with our race being postponed from May to October. We look forward to having our race participants out on the course. I'd like to extend our thanks and appreciation to our race sponsors and our in-kind donors who still provide monetary and other sponsorship and are working with us to find new ways to promote our library, being flexible as we navigate these uncertain times. We've also brought back the Ready, Set, Go giveaway program this year, and hopefully that will add to our donations. The circumstances of 2021 continue to challenge the Lucy Robbins Wells Library to provide top-notch services and programs. I'm pleased to say that our wonderful staff continues to meet these challenges, finding new and creative ways to keep our library a first-class institution, displaying adaptability and flexibility with very short notice. Many of these programs are made possible with the financial support of the friends and private donations. I encourage you to take advantage of the unique and wide-ranging opportunities that the library brings to our community. At the present time, our records are being prepared for our accountant, who will review them and prepare the financial statements and the nonprofit income tax returns due in November. As we look forward to another challenging year for the Lucy Robbins Wells Library, we thank you for your continued support.
Thank you, Leanne. And now I'd like to ask our library director, Lisa Maston, to give her report. Lisa, when you're ready, if you want to unmute.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Just give me one moment and I will, there we go. Ooh, worked out better than last year. So, thank you. I'm happy. My name is Lisa Maston. I'm the library director at the Lucy Robbins Wells Library. And tonight I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of the library the past year. When I was looking back at the past year, you know, I could have imagined that we would have been closed for as long as we were. I mean, I know when and how it impacted the library and the library services, our abilities to do the things the way we did, and what we needed to do and how we had to constantly adapt to the changing environment. We had to work, you know, we were depending on change, but we also had to be vigilant about, you know, being safe, keeping each other safe, and just being able to think constantly on our feet and change services. Prior to, oops, hold on. There we go, sorry. So prior to the summer, last summer, the library closed on March 16th due to the pandemic. When the day we closed was the day we stopped lending materials. And part of that was also because the statewide, we stopped delivering physical materials, but staff continued to work during this time. We would answer the phones, we would give information assistance, we would assist people with digital materials, but the actual, any of the physical materials people wanted, they could no longer get. All materials, we did accept returns through, we never stopped accepting returns like a lot of libraries did, but we did quarantine the materials for 3 days before we handled them. We began working in teams. So half the staff worked in the building, half the staff worked remotely. And part of this was to keep each other safe due to part of it was space constraints of staff workspace. And also part of it was if one team went down with COVID, at least you had another team that could come in and keep the library running. So we continued to do that. We started that when we closed. On June 1st, we did begin lending materials again via curbside and offering virtual programming. During the same time, the town hall, the new town hall was completed, and we all got our addresses all changed. We were no longer 95 Cedar Street. We were now 100 Garfield Street. And the town hall is no longer 131 Cedar Street. They're now 200 Garfield Street. So that was all new as well. We had to look at all of our services and we had to start modifying them. We went to limited services based on the fact that the building wasn't physically open. One of the, we changed our hours, and we also, part of it was due to the staffing issues now because we were working half teams. So we went to basically days and no weekends. And then we started to look at all of the services. The one service that we had to quickly modify was curbside service. The only way people could physically get books from us was through the curbside service. They could pick them up once we brought them out and put them on this table. The curbside service, we've been using it about 2 years, and it was typically a convenient service for patrons. And we were lucky if we got 8 curbside pickups a month. So you figure about 90, maybe 90 curbside pickups a year. And if you look in the number on the screen, we did almost 16,000 curbside transactions this past year. So that was a necessity. People had to use the curbside in order to get materials. And the other thing that happened is people had to come to our library to pick up their materials. The statewide delivery system shut down around the time that all the libraries started closing. So the only way they could get the materials from our libraries, they had to come to our library to pick them up. But this is one of the services that has constantly evolved over the past year. When we did modify the service initially, we made it a next day pickup, and part of it was to do with staffing. People called the day before they wanted to pick up, set up a pickup time, and it was either an item that had come in that they had reserved, or they would call and request items that they would like to pick up, and then we would pull them, get them ready, process them, and have them ready for the people to pick up the next day. One of the things that we found quickly with this is that the number of items that we were pulling every day exploded. You typically walked in the morning and you were pulling at least 200 items between 9 and 10. And that didn't count all the items that were coming in during the day or the requests that were happening during the day. So it was a service that was used heavily, but it was also pretty staff intensive. So we did next day pickup pretty much from midsummer on June 1st until the end of October. And then what happened in October was we opened for 2 weeks. COVID rate, the infection rate had gone down enough that we could open for limited browsing. And we were able to do that for 2 weeks. But then we had to close again because the rate started to get really bad. So there was a high level of frustration from patrons that we were now closed again. So we quickly switched gears, even though we were still down half the staff at one time, and we went to a same day 2-hour pickup. And then what has happened recently is we opened again in spring, and we've just closed recently, although we did reopen for limited browsing today. But there was also, once again, when we closed in August, people were frustrated. So we just we went to same day pickup, and it was also within they could call and pick up within 10-15 minutes of that phone call. The difference here is that by this time we were fully staffed, so we were able to offer that service. This has been one of those services that we have constantly modified based on COVID and offering the best service we can. The other big service that changed for the library was programming. We'd always done in-person programming. Virtual programming was we had really never done it before. But when COVID happened and the building shut, that all changed. And initially we didn't do programming probably for the first 2 months, but then we started to see this was going to be sort of a long haul, and we wanted to be able to offer our patrons something. So we went to virtual programming. And this actually required a pretty high learning curve for staff because you're using Zoom to do your programming, which none of us had ever really used before. And we also we created our own YouTube channel as part of the programming process. So staff had to learn how to use Zoom. They had to learn how to set up, record, edit, and then they had to take that recording, upload it to a YouTube channel, and then they would create a link, and the link would be put on the library website. So it was not a very intuitive process for people. And We all made a lot of mistakes and we owned it. But this was a whole different way for us to do programming. So initially it was pretty much pre-recorded programming, but as we became more comfortable, we went to live programming. We did live programming in-house. We also did live programming with programmers, outside programmers. And we also started using Zoom for meetings. It was the only way we really could meet. So when we were doing the half staff thing, we would do a lot of Zoom meetings with our staff to keep in touch and informed. And it was still a way for us to see each other and not lose that connection. But all of our in-house and professional meetings were done via Zoom. With the programming, the children's was the first department to kind of jump on the virtual programming. They started doing digital story times in June. They have their own little stage in their programming room, and they set it up and they'll record the programming there. And as you can see on some of these programs, like the Cookbook Club, they're actually doing them at home. You can quickly learn how to do all this stuff and then bring it in and put it up on the website. So they were the first ones to kind of jump on that. So they did story times, they did Cookbook Club, book talks, and then we started doing live programming. The Tales to Tales program is a live program where the child reads to the dog. Jeanette said a lot of times parents wanted her to read to their children. So it was kind of a nice thing in some ways. And then we used programmers. The other thing that the children's staff did first that nobody else did was they did the grab and go craft kits. And they started really doing that right in early June. And those are so incredibly popular. And as you can see, some of the parents like them so much, they post them on social media to let people know that their kids enjoyed them that much. The teen programming is more pre-recorded programming and grab and goes. Teens are a little bit harder audience to reach, and I think a lot of them are very busy, but they tend to go back and watch a video. So we've kind of tried to gear our programs. We'd record them on topics that we think might interest them, and then we would put them up on the website. And they also love their grab and go crafts as well. Adults kind of were like children's, where we kind of did a mixture of live programming and pre-recorded programming. We do the Disney Live, book discussions live, and then we do pre-recorded programming with different speakers. Adults also have their own grab and go packets. They have craft packets, they have puzzle packets and coloring packets, and we have a steady group of people that every month want those packets as soon as they come out. We also continued with technology program. And the other thing that the adult programmers were doing was we were collaborating with other groups. We've done several series with area libraries, like with the one Karen's talking about tomorrow night with, we're having Martha Hall Kelly speak at, she's doing it for 5 towns, and we all collaborated so we could afford the program, but also it was a way for each of us to offer kind of interesting program that maybe we all couldn't do because of staffing or money or whatever. The other thing we did is we did programming with Parks and Rec. We also did programming with Chamber of Commerce. So we wanted to do that because it's a cost effective, but it also allows us to offer maybe a different variety of program that we wouldn't be able to do. The other thing that we had to really look at was digital services. COVID really had you, when people could physically not come into the building and we couldn't even lend materials, the digital services just boomed. The number of people who are downloading streaming services, ebooks, audiobooks, that just increased so dramatically. So we had to make sure that we were on top of it. The one thing we did do is we increased our digital collection pretty dramatically. And I just see I spelled downloads wrong. I'm sorry. I just noticed that. I'll point it out myself. But what we did is we reallocated funds from our print materials to digital materials, and that afforded us to be able to increase the digital collection that is still being used. And one of the pluses of doing that is we were able to support the school curriculum. Kids couldn't physically get the books they needed to read for their classes, so we would purchase the digital copies of the books in Hoopla, because in Hoopla, they're always available immediately. And we would purchase them based on a teacher's request, a student's request, and then they could just go in and download the item for their class. The other thing that we did as well is we added some new online services, News Bank Online, which is a newspaper service or database of hundreds of newspapers throughout the country. And we added something called Help Now, which is an online tutorial service for students of all ages. So that was another thing to try to offer students that were struggling and needed some help, because they could go to this service for free if they were a Newington resident. And then we used our website and social media really as a way to make information available, to access information, to access the collection that they could get. And we're continuing to do that because it's one of the better ways. If some of the print newspapers are no longer available in print in town, so you have to really rely on like digital services. So this is one of the ways that we've been able to get information out about the library. And our website really is almost like a second, it's a virtual library for people. It's a way they can go to the library 24 hours a day to get some materials or some information. Children's services, we did add some new services when it was appropriate, and we also modified services when we needed to. Children's did add 3 new services over the past year. Pop-up books was kind of a fun thing where they grabbed a selection of books over about a specific topic, and then they had a prize. And all of a sudden, this picture would pop up on Facebook, and the first person to call in and claim the pop-up would be able to check out the books, and they'd win the prize. So this would happen pretty much on a weekly basis, and parents really loved it and kids loved it because they would kind of look for it. Topic totes were added. They are totes that have about 10 or 12 books about a specific topic, and parents can just check out the tote and they'll get an assortment of books about a topic their child might like dinosaurs, trucks, princesses, things like that. And then book bundles, parent could go online and fill out a form, answer specific questions, and then a librarian would go and pick 10 specific titles related to whatever questions the parents had asked for their child, and the child will get a customized selection of books on a certain topic or whatever the parent requested for them, and they could check those out as well. And then, as I said, we had revised some services. In addition to curbside service, our Books for You service, which was actually for homebound, we were able to expand it. Normally we had volunteers bringing materials to people who are homebound in Newington. Thanks to the collaboration with the General Federation of Women's Clubs in Newington and Wethersfield, we were able to offer a contactless delivery service to people not only who are homebound, but or people that just couldn't get to the library or weren't comfortable coming to the library. So it was a service we were able to kind of change and expand. Notary services stopped when the library closed, and I'm happy to say that we just restarted them at the beginning of September, and we actually have 2 notaries now instead of 1. So that we have a little bit more flexibility with the times that we can notarize people's documents. The story walk was a story that the children's department started last year, where it's basically an outside story. They brought a story outside the children. They have about 25 stakes that have a storyboard on each one, and each stake tells a part of this one story, and you walk along and read them until you get to the end of the story. And it was originally located at the Mill Pond Park, but it's been relocated to the perimeter of the library's parking lot. And a lot of people seem really happy to be able to just kind of walk along and read the story with their kids. Last year, we offered temporary library cards specifically for people who didn't have cards, who wanted to access our digital services or the online services. People couldn't get a physical card because the building was closed. But once the summer hit, we realized that people wanted to have the card because they wanted to check out books now that they were able to through curbside. So we streamlined the library card registration process so that people could fill out a form. They could either fax it or email it to us with a picture of their ID, and we would have them pick up the card through curbside, or we could mail it to them. So it gave more people options to get a library card to use our resources. We had a lot of change of personnel again. Last year was a big year, and then this past year we had another one. We actually had 3 department heads retire, which is big. So Sue Schneider, who was head of collection management, retired, and Dorothy Russell is now the new head of collection management. Lynn Cayley, our business manager, retired, and Carolyn McLean is now the new business manager. And Diane Durrett, who was a longtime head of reference, retired, and Jennifer Hebert is now the new head of reference. So in addition to those big changes, we also hired several new part-time employees in positions that were open. They had been open since 2019 because of a hiring freeze. Our friends group, they're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. If you'd been at the book sale yesterday, you'd see why they are. They work really hard. Pre-COVID, the Friends had all these big events, and they were mostly fundraisers that benefited the library. They had the book sales, they had their Winter Fest, the Waterfall Festival, they would sell materials. They had donation bins in the lobby that you all remember that were just piled high with things. They would come into the library to help us do the mailings for the footnotes. So they were an active group, and they were active a lot of times either in the library or near the library. Well, when COVID hit and everything shut down, they had to kind of look at what they did and try to figure out maybe a different way to do it. And they have done is they have outdoor donation days. They do it in the parking lot outside. And they've had outdoor book sales since last year. They've varied the way they've done them, but they've done such a great job getting these books out to people, and people are so thankful that they can come and buy books outside. And then they also are participating in some town events, but again, everything is done outside, but they've really done such a great job, and they work so hard. And a lot of the stuff that you see on the screen is very, very time and labor intensive. And yet they all just plug along and, schlep the books and sort the books, and they're smiling when they do it. So you can't ask for much more than that. The Library Board of Trustees, one of the things that this organization funded for us, and that was actually completed this past fall, was the refurbishment of the parent area. We kind of started that before COVID hit, but we put in new seating and shelving where the parent books are. And we recently completed it, but this was all done from funds from the raise from 2019. And then they also continued with the dining partner program that they had started the year before as well with the Friends, and they are supporting local restaurants in the area who make donations to the library. But the road race that Diane had mentioned earlier was their only fundraiser, and it's a big fundraiser. And that was one that had been postponed and then had to be canceled. And they immediately turned it into another fundraiser by taking the prizes from the race and making them the prizes for the Ready, Set, Go giveaway. And it turned out to be a very, very successful fundraiser for the board. And it was pretty impressive how they just quickly turned that around, because the decision to cancel the race was made more towards late summer. So they did a really nice job with that. When we were closed, we did do a couple things in the building. We took advantage of it a little bit. We replaced furniture in the children's room that was like 25 plus years old. A lot of that seating that you were sitting on was kind of old, and I don't want to tell you what happened when kids sat on it, but so we replaced it with nice new bright furniture. We added additional shelving for the children's department because their collection is quite tight. And the other thing the children's department did too, as well, is that they reorganized a lot of their picture books, because if you've ever been up there, it's a really kind of daunting collection because the books are so thin and there's so many of them, but they went and reorganized a lot of them by categories to help parents and children find them much more easily. We got new library carpet. The children's department has all new carpet, and same with the first floor of the library. And this was all done in the past year. Part of it when the library was closed, and some of it was when we reopened recently. They just completed it. And it looks really nice. The carpet was, again, a lot of it was installed in the mid 90s. So it's quite old and worn. And when we hit mid-April, when we hit the spring, vaccinations were now, kind of a reality for us. And we started to see the COVID rate down. And on April 28th, we went from a closed building that only did curbside to a building that was open for browsing. And we didn't, we opened for browsing with no appointments. People could just come in. But what they saw when they walked in the door was completely different than what they were used to a year before that. All the desks had sneeze guards. I didn't even know what a sneeze guard was until COVID. I mean, who knew what it was? But it's a barrier now between us and the patrons. There was no seating for patrons. Really, the intent was browsing only. There was no play area for children. And people could ask for information assistance, but again, there was that barrier between them. I will say that despite all that, we still did a lot. If you can see the numbers there, we still managed in the past year to circulate over 156,000 items, despite the fact that we were closed and we weren't actually circulating for several months. And the staff answered more than 40,000 questions over the past year as well, which is pretty impressive. And as we went from spring into summer, programming continued to be virtual for the most part, but as the weather got nicer, we started to kind of look at alternative ways to program, and we went outside. So our summer reading kickoff was always inside, and people loved to come into the room and pick their books and get their little prize or whatever, but we did it outside, and we have the same number of people coming that day to sign up for summer reading, which I was really happy with. And then the children's department did several, story times. They did a paint class. Karen Benner did an outdoor book discussion, and people were thrilled. And part of it was people were so happy to see each other for a program in person rather than through a lens. And I was actually able in July to do an in-person craft program. We had people socially distanced and they had to wear masks. And unfortunately, after that is when the COVID rates started going up. Some of the challenges we faced over the year, in addition to COVID was obviously the biggest challenge, and it's going to continue to be a challenge as we kind of adjust to this new normal way of doing things, was that we continued to have roof leaks throughout the whole year. And even as of the last storms, and I realized the last storms were heavy rain, but we continued to have roof leaks. The skylights leak every time we have a rainstorm, and tiles are falling off the roof of the library. The facilities director is working on this, so I'm hopeful that in the next year that this is an area this whole thing is actually going to be completely addressed, and leaks are going to be something up the path. Parking, I'm not going to belabor the point, but parking is still an issue. When the town hall, when that building opened up and the community center opened up and people could actually use them over the summer, parking was a real challenge. There really was not enough parking for both the buildings and all the programs and meetings and services that were happening. And I think as things open up more, this is going to be a constant headache. And the biggest thing too is that we get frustrated, but I think patrons get more frustrated regardless of where they're going, that they come to a town hall or the library or the community center to do something and they can't find parking. And then there's such a high level of frustration. Funding and staffing, as of July 1st, we're now down to full-time librarians. They're unfunded positions, so we don't have them. And we're still trying to figure out what that new reality is going to be like. We reallocated some of the duties, but we haven't been able to do all of them. And so some of the services maybe that we've done before, we just aren't going to be able to do right now until those positions are once again funded. And space constraints, as Diane had brought up earlier, continues to be an issue. And we really found that out when COVID hit, because we realized right away that you can't socially distance and work in a lot of our workspaces, that people using computers in the library, there was no social distancing between them, and there were no barriers between them. Same with seating, with programming, with meeting space. So that's something that we do have to address, because it's going to be an ongoing problem and issue. And there are areas in the library that just are not big enough to do what we need them to do or what the community wants us to do. So moving forward, we're looking forward to, really opening up and going back to the way, I don't think we'll go back to the way we were for a long time, but really being open, having meetings, in-person programming, things like that again. recently in June, we were a recipient of 2 grants. One was from the federal government, the American Recovery Plan Act, specifically for libraries. And our library received money, and we are using it to purchase technology furniture that will allow for socially distanced seating, barriers between the computers, so we can have more of them out there for the patrons to use. And they're also more tech friendly, they're ergonomically correct, and they're actually sleeker and will allow us to maybe utilize the space more efficiently. And also with that grant, we're getting headsets for the staff. And it's not only to provide better service, we could answer phones when we're in the stacks, we can keep the patron on the phone when we're looking for their book in the stacks. It also means we don't have to share phones with each other. Because when the phone rings, multiple people are picking that up. So we don't have to worry about, the germs and all that other stuff anymore. And then we were the recipient from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. The Newington Greater Together Community Fund gave us money to purchase 10 additional Wi-Fi hotspots to circulate to the public. So that would be a total of 12 that will be circulating. They circulate for a week. It's unlimited data. And it really addresses some of the connectivity problems that people might be having for various reasons. It could be money that they can't afford it. It could be that they're in between changing services, or their data plan ran out. Or we had the one that I mention a lot is that we had a parents couldn't physically go to games at the high school. And if we allowed a parent to take our hotspot and stream the games to the parents. And that was one way the parents could stay connected and watch their kids play sports. So that's, the different ways that we're using it, but we're pleased to be able to offer more. And we know that really moving forward, what we're going to have to do is reimagine services constantly, rethink them, revamp them, redesign them, repurpose space, everything like that, because as we learned in the last year, things change very quickly, and you never know when things are going to change or things are going to happen. So it's always a good thing to be looking at that and how can we make it better? How can you offer better service? What can we change? What can we do differently? And the last 2 weeks when we've been closed because the COVID rate was high, we did switch service to be able to offer better service to our patrons by taking people wanted to be able to browse the new books. So we brought that outdoors to them. So we had a browsing section that they could come and browse the new books. They could check them out right side. We had a person sitting outside that could help them. They could answer questions. And on the times that we didn't have the browsing, we always had somebody in the lobby that could help that person that came to the door. And then we did also offer patrons could use computers during this time as well on a limited basis. But we were trying to always come up with ways that we could continue to offer service that the patrons needed, but in a safe way, way due to COVID protocol. So I just wanted to kind of like wrap this up by saying that I think that's going to be how we have to think about library service over the next year. Down the line, it's probably going to be different, but we know that with COVID, we have to get the information out, but we might have to do it differently. We have lost patrons. How can we get them back? So we have to kind of reimagine how can we do better, offer better service to our patrons with what we have, what constraints we have. And we just don't know how things are going to change even over the next few months. So I did want to say that, we have a great staff. And I think that we have a lot of support. We have a lot of support from the town manager. We have a lot of support from the town council. We also have a great library board who has been working with us through the whole year, trying to make sure we're okay, trying to see what they could do to help us. And we have a great friends group that's constantly, doing the same for us. They're advocating for us. They're trying to raise money for us so that if we had to purchase some things to help us offer better service, we can. So we're very fortunate with that. And I kind of wanted to finish my presentation by kind of acknowledging a couple besides the ones I've kind of mentioned was we lost one person I wanted to acknowledge and kind of remember this past year was we lost one of our longtime trustees who had been a trustee for 39 years, and she was a huge library advocate. And, I guess what you learned more than anything was just, how important the people are and stuff in your lives. And Marie Dowling was probably one of the fiercest library advocates you could have come across. And for those of us that were able to work with her, what a kind of honor and pleasure that was. And she'd actually died of COVID. So we all know that it was out there, it's still out there, and what a sad way to go. But I did want to remember her because she was such an influence on me and on the library. And I wanted to kind of end it with thanking the staff. We have a great, great, great staff. And as you see, we're all socially distanced, but we have our masks on. I worked with a great assistant director, Karen Benner, this past year. We each had to kind of take over the team approach. And I didn't work with Karen for over a year, but I talked to her every day. But she did such a great job doing that. But the staff stepped up, and I think the town is lucky to have them. We're lucky to have them. And I just can't say enough about how hard they worked to try to offer the best service we can over the past year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Once again, you and the library staff have done an amazing job. You continue to serve, entertain, and help our community learn. So we appreciate that. We very much appreciate your agility, your ability to see what's happening in the community and make the appropriate adjustments. Even I think earlier in the evening, you had talked about how you had spontaneously made outdoor browsing available. And of course, that's got to be contingent on weather and items coming in. But again, we very much appreciate what you and the library staff have done over the past year. And I would imagine that everyone's getting tired of the COVID regime that we have here. Again, our sincere gratitude. Before we move on to nominations, I'd just like to take a moment to recognize some of my fellow trustees, and I'll read their names. Anna Eddy, Andrew Brecker, Laurel Goodgen, Judy Igelski, Lisa Jones, Pauline Kruk, Iris Larson, Leanne Mankey, Maureen Lyons, Neil Ryan, and Christine Shushin. So I appreciate all their efforts as well through the year. As you can see, we are not meeting in person, and I, for one, miss that personal touch. I think the sidebar conversations are easier when you have meetings in person a little bit before and after. But again, everybody has been committed to what we can do to bring library services to our community in these unusual times. So again, my thanks to my fellow Board of Trustees. Next on the agenda is nominations. And for the renewal of the 3-year terms of corporate members, there are 3 3-year term renewals coming up: Iris Larson, Judy Igelski, and Laurel Goodgen. And I would ask at this time if there are any other nominations from the floor. James, I don't know if you have anyone from public.
Just Natalie with us.
Okay, Natalie. Give it a moment to see if there's any other nominations from the floor for those corporate terms. No, very good. So if there are no additional nominations, may I have a motion to accept the 3 3-year term renewals, say that 3 times fast, for corporate members?
Leanne Mankey, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Neil Ryan will second it.
Thank you, Neil. Any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. So Iris Larson, Judy Igelski, and Laurel Goodgen will serve 3 more years as a corporate trustee. Okay. The next is the nomination of new officers for the Board of Trustees. Nominations for the officers are as follows: President Diane Stam, Vice President Maureen Lyons, Secretary Iris Larson, and Treasurer Leanne Mankey. Are there any nominations from the floor? Hearing none. May I have a motion to accept the officers as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Chris Shushan.
Thank you,
Second.
Christine.
My apologies, I wasn't looking at the screen. Who was it that moved the motion?
Laurel
Laurel.
moved the motion. And Christine seconded. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? No? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, old business. There was no old business on the agenda. Now, new business is the recognition of honorees. Unfortunately, our honoree couldn't be with us this evening, but when we can get together in person, we will make sure that we have an appropriate celebration and recognition for her. Our honoree is Anna Eddy. People handle difficult times in many ways. Some folks pull back and wait for the storm to go by. Others take a deep breath and take on the challenge before them. Anna Eddy is one who takes on challenges. She brings her creativity, hard work, perseverance, and smile to resolving any challenge. Last year, when we realized that even the modified 5K fundraiser would not be possible, she proposed converting the race entries to drawings so that the racers and others in our community would still feel connected and benefit from our sponsors' generosity in providing prizes to our supporters. This year, she reached out to some of our former sponsors and brought them on board at the appreciated platinum and hospitality levels. And you have been enjoying the dining partner program with the flyer available through Lucy to Go and Footnotes mailings. That's another project that Anna was involved in and bringing forward with in collaboration with the Friends. So again, as soon as we can gather together, we will be honoring Anna in person. And she has our sincere thanks for keeping the creative ideas flowing and being willing to bring ideas to fruition. Fundraising is the most important part of our board, along with the overall guidance of the library and library services to the town. So the fact that she put so much time and energy into this is greatly appreciated by all of us. Next up is public participation. And James, I would ask if there's anyone out there who would like to say anything or address the board in any fashion.
Our attendee does. Just a moment. I will unmute her. Should be all set, Natalie.
Thank you. I think I'd like to compliment the Board of Trustees for doing a wonderful job this past year. Having attended some of your meetings in another position, I know how hard you guys work, and I think you all deserve a round of applause. I also hope that Lisa's PowerPoint presentation is going to make it on the website and maybe on NCTV, because I really think the whole rest of the town should see that presentation. It's an eye-opener on what the library does, what the library needs to do in the future, and all sorts of things in between. So I think she did a wonderful job putting that together, even with one misspelling, which she doesn't want me to comment on, but I just did it anyway. So that I would say, thanks guys for doing a really great job, and keep it up.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that. We know that as a longtime member of the Friends, you're no stranger to hard work yourself, but we appreciate your kind words and recognition. Is there anyone else out there that would like to make a comment?
That's all on attendees. If it's any participants are interested on the meeting, that's up to you.
Anyone? No? Okay, again, I would, sorry, I have one more point of business before we can adjourn. All votes have been cast and the slate of officers as presented earlier was unanimously accepted. So the new officers for the 2021 to the 2022 term are President Diane Stam, Vice President Maureen Lyons, Secretary Iris Larson, and Treasurer Leanne Mankey. So again, I think our staff has been incredible. You continue to support the community and reinvent traditional services while bringing in new services and dealing with some of the new regulations and challenges that we have to deal with. So our sincere thanks. And at that point, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Brecker has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Andy, would you like to make a comment? Hi.
Well, I would, and I would just like to thank all of the officers for agreeing to serve again. I'm not sure that all of us who aren't involved every day in what it takes to manage the board and can remain on good terms with the library director and try to do all the things that are necessary to make the library better. You guys do a lot more work than the rest of us. And I just want to let you know that I appreciate it. I'm sure all the other board members do as well.
Thank you, Andy. That sounds like the voice of experience. Anyone else have a comment? No? Then I will once again entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Thank you, Laurel.
I'll second. Judy.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you for seconding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James. We appreciate your help. Elizabeth, thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Take care. Well,
Night all.
see you soon. Down the road.